December the 2nd, 1805. 3 emperors, 170,000 men, one frozen battlefield that would change the course of European history forever. The sun rises over the Pratzen Heights in Moravia, and Napoleon Bonaparte is about to execute the most brilliant military deception ever conceived. For 9 hours, the fate of empires will hang in the balance. This is Austerlitz, the battle so perfect, military academies still study it 220 years later. What you're about to witness is not Hollywood fiction. Every movement, every strategy, every desperate moment actually happened. And by the end, you'll understand why Napoleon called this the finest of all I have fought. Picture Europe in 1805. Napoleon has crowned himself Emperor of France just 1 year earlier, and the old powers, Austria, Russia, and Britain, are terrified. They form the Third Coalition, determined to destroy this Corsican upstart before he can reshape the continent. Tsar Alexander Brisson of Russia, young and ambitious, marches westward with 70,000 troops. Emperor Francis II of Austria mobilizes his forces. Together, they command nearly 85,000 men and believe they have Napoleon trapped near the Moravian town of Austerlitz. Napoleon has just 73,000 soldiers, outnumbered and seemingly cornered. The Allied commanders are confident, perhaps too confident. They see a young emperor who has bitten off more than he can chew. But Napoleon sees something entirely different. He sees an opportunity to turn their confidence into their destruction. He begins crafting what will become known as the Trap of Austerlitz. Here's where Napoleon's genius transforms into something almost supernatural. He deliberately weakens his right flank, abandoning the strategic Pratzen Heights, the high ground that dominates the entire battlefield. He sends envoys to the Allied camp appearing desperate for peace negotiations. He orders his troops to look exhausted, defeated, on the verge of collapse. His marshals think he's lost his mind. But Napoleon knows human psychology better than anyone alive. He studied his opponents, the young Tsar Alexander, eager to prove himself, the Austrian generals, still stinging from previous defeats, the Russian commanders, confident in their numerical superiority. When Allied scouts report that Napoleon has abandoned the heights and weakened his right flank, they see exactly what Napoleon wants them to see, a fatal French weakness begging to be exploited. The Allied War Council meets on December 1st and makes their decision. They'll sweep down from the north, crush Napoleon's weak right flank, cut him off from Vienna, and destroy him. They're walking straight into the most elegant trap ever set on a battlefield. December 2nd dawns cold and foggy. At 4 a.m., Allied columns begin their massive wheeling movement, marching down from the Pratzen Heights toward Napoleon's seemingly vulnerable right flank under General Legrand. Thousands upon thousands of Russian and Austrian soldiers stream down the slopes in the darkness, leaving the heights increasingly bare. Napoleon watches through his telescope, counting the enemy battalions as they descend. His marshals are nervous. The plan requires perfect timing. 1 hour passes. 2. By 7 a.m., the winter sun begins burning through the fog, and Napoleon sees exactly what he's been waiting for: the Pratzen Heights, the key to the entire battlefield, now defended by only a skeleton force. At 8:30 a.m., he turns to Marshal Soult and speaks the words that will echo through history. "How long will it take you to move your divisions to the Pratzen Heights?" Soult replies, "Less than 20 minutes, sire." Napoleon checks his watch one final time and says simply, "Then we will wait a quarter of an hour." At precisely 9 a.m., with the winter sun illuminating the battlefield in what would later be called the Sun of Austerlitz, Napoleon gives the order. One sharp blow and the war is over. What happens next unfolds with devastating precision. Marshal Soult's corps, 26,000 men, surge up the Pratzen Heights like a tidal wave. The shocked Allied defenders, outnumbered and outflanked, are swept away in minutes. Napoleon now controls the high ground, and more importantly, he split the Allied army in two. The Russian Imperial Guard launches a desperate counterattack to retake the heights, the finest troops in the Tsar's army never before defeated, but Napoleon has anticipated even this. He unleashes his own Imperial Guard and the cavalry under Marshal Bessières. On the slopes of Pratzen, elite meets elite in one of the most ferocious engagements of the Napoleonic Wars. The Russians fight with suicidal bravery, but French artillery is now firing down from the heights at point-blank range. The snow turns red. Meanwhile, on the French right flank, the Allied troops who marched down that morning to exploit Napoleon's weakness suddenly realize they're the ones who are trapped. Marshal Davout's corps, which had force-marched 70 miles in 48 hours to arrive at the battle, holds them in place while Napoleon's main force on the heights begins rolling up their entire position from behind. The Allied army is collapsing. By 2 p.m., the Allied southern wing is in full retreat, but there's nowhere to run. They're pushed back toward the frozen Sachin and Menitz ponds, lakes covered with ice in the December cold. Thousands of Russian soldiers stream onto the ice, desperately trying to escape. Napoleon positions his artillery on the shores and gives the order to fire. Cannonballs slam into the ice, and the winter surface begins to crack. Contemporary accounts differ on how many men drowned. French propaganda claimed thousands, modern historians suggest hundreds, but the psychological impact is absolute. Men, horses, and cannon plunge into the freezing water. Those who don't drown die of hypothermia within minutes. The image of Russian soldiers vanishing through the ice becomes the defining symbol of Austerlitz. By 4 p.m., as winter darkness falls, it's over. The Battle of Austerlitz is complete. The Allied army has suffered approximately 36,000 casualties, killed, wounded, or captured, nearly 40% of their total force. French losses are around 9,000, but the numbers don't tell the full story. Napoleon hasn't just won a battle. He's destroyed the Third Coalition in a single day. The consequences ripple across Europe like an earthquake. Within days, Austria sues for peace, signing the Treaty of Pressburg and ceding vast territories to France. The Holy Roman Empire, which has existed for over 1,000 years, will be dissolved within months. Tsar Alexander retreats to Russia, humiliated, the image of his drowning soldiers haunting him. Prussia, which had been considering joining the coalition, backs down in fear. Napoleon is now the undisputed master of continental Europe. He'll reorganize Germany, crown his brothers as kings, and redraw the map according to his vision. British Prime Minister William Pitt reportedly looks at a map of Europe after hearing news of Austerlitz and says, "Roll up that map. It will not be needed these 10 years." Militarily, Austerlitz becomes the gold standard for battlefield tactics. The maneuver, appearing weak to draw the enemy into a vulnerable position, then striking at the decisive point, enters every military textbook. Even today, at West Point, Sandhurst, and St. Cyr, officer cadets study Napoleon's movements on December 2, 1805, as an example of operational art at its absolute peak. So what can we learn from Austerlitz 2 centuries later? Perhaps it's that genius isn't about strength, it's about understanding. Napoleon won because he understood his enemies better than they understood themselves. He knew their pride, their ambition, their desperation. He gave them exactly what they wanted to see, and they couldn't resist taking the bait. Austerlitz reminds us that in any conflict, whether on battlefields, in boardrooms, or in life, the person who can see several moves ahead, who can turn weakness into strength, who can remain calm while others panic, that person has an almost insurmountable advantage. Napoleon would fight dozens more battles, win most of them, and ultimately lose everything at Waterloo 10 years later. But on December 2nd, 1805, on the fields of Austerlitz, he achieved something close to perfection. If this story fascinated you, hit that subscribe button. We're diving deep into history's most incredible true stories, the battles, betrayals, and brilliant minds that shaped our world. Leave a comment telling me which historical battle you want covered next. And if you want to understand why Napoleon ultimately fell, check out our video on Waterloo linked above. History isn't just about the past, it's about understanding how extraordinary people, in extraordinary moments, changed everything. Thanks for watching, and please consider liking, commenting, and sharing it. Helps immensely, and to be updated for next videos.